Hi, welcome to Market in a Minute. This is where we analyze the markets looking for opportunities, and we're going to focus on those opportunities this week. But remember, most importantly, we want to protect the downside when we think we need to. So, combining the technicals and the market analysis all together this week, we think, we had this big run in the overall market, and the market rolled over kind of as expected, roughly over 5%. And we got down to the 100-day moving average and we popped. We were kind of thinking we'd hold there, and we did. Now we're back to close to the 50-day moving average. We'll see if that holds. But the market itself is not set up for a big run. And I'll show you what a setup looks like here in a second. But it's not set up for it. If you go back to where we were in November, that was a better setup. Not perfect, but better. We broke above the 200-day there, and we had a nice runway. But it's not set up that way. The market's still at a relatively high position. We have valuation issues of 21 times earnings on this year's earnings. The 10-year Treasury has moved up, so it's taken out any sort of upside potential we have relative to bonds. So there's not a lot of valuation left in the overall market itself, and it's a stock by stock kind of pick your best stock sort of market at this point. So the oil prices, we think the oil prices are key to kind of what's happening in inflation and therefore the valuations of the overall market as well. So Israel is going to probably go into Rafah here soon. We have to see in the Gaza Strip. We'll have to see how Iran reacts to that. If Iran doesn't react to it, and I don't think they will, we think that we're going to take that war premium out of oil. And kind of the vibes in the market, there's about $5 a war premium in the price of oil at this point. You can see here the price of oil has come down about $3. If we take another 5 out, we're at roughly $78. We're below the 200-day. It's really close to a nice support level. So that seems very conceivable to us to see the price of oil to drop. Maybe it doesn't happen right away, but it's very doable. We also think that there's a clear path for Trump to be elected by looking at the polls. And I gotta laugh, when Biden did his speech last week, four more years, and saying pause at the end. I thought I was watching Ron Burgundy on TV. But anyhow, it seems like Trump has a real shot of being elected. And then we all know what Trump's going to do. They're going to increase oil production by giving incentives, freeing up that federal land, and oil will probably come down considerably from where it is if he does get elected. So that will cure some of the inflation problems that we have. Okay, so speaking of setups, so this is what we really like to see in a technical setup. So this is back in November. This is the XBI, the small cap biotechnology index. And as you know, we were pounding on the table back then because it was set up really well. And you could see that the market was below the 20-day, and the 20 was below the 50, the 50 below the 100, and the 100 below the 200. So it's set up really well. We love these types of setups where it can break through these moving averages on the way up and gather that momentum for a nice push higher. So this was a 60% move from the bottom to the top. Now it's pulled back again. It's pulled back to the 200-day moving average. We think it's set up again, more of an upward moving pattern from this point, but an upward moving pattern. We think that the small cap biotechnology stocks are set up for a nice run as we go through maybe the remainder of the year and the next year. So we think these stocks are very undervalued. We really like the stocks that we own and that we're focused on more so than the overall index, but we think the index looks interesting to us as well. One of the names that we've talked about repeatedly on these updates is Veru. So I spoke to management briefly. Actually, I communicated with management briefly on Friday, and it was after the Oppenheimer had their update with a key opinion leader, two key opinion leaders on this sector about growing muscle when you're losing weight. We think these drugs are going to be very important, very used out in front of everybody at this point. And I kind of think if they get a broad approval of that drug rather than just the elderly, they get a broad approval, but the key opinion leaders thought it was appropriate to do so. FDA is going to have to kind of think through that process a little bit. But if they do, this is a $10 billion opportunity. It reminds me of Viking, kind of in that life cycle where we initially started buying it, and had roughly a 28 times movement in that stock. So we think that there's quite a bit upside in what we're looking at in the biotechnology space. The spending in AI, incredible. It's jaw-dropping to see these numbers. This has never happened before, this amount of capital spending. And we think so Microsoft, Meta, Google, all put their numbers out on capital spending. We have Amazon this week. We'll have to see what they say about it. But it's a huge amount of money. It's jaw-dropping, the magnitude of what they're going to spend. We think Meta's approach is actually, if they have a good product, it's just going to crush the economics out of this sector, but they're going to get a lot of advertising. They want to give it away for free. Hallelujah, baby. We think that AMD, as we mentioned, when they reported last quarter, we didn't like the quarter. We thought the valuations were too high. We thought AMD stock was a short. The stock has fallen 30% from the high. It's held a support level here. Now, this is a wicked downtrend, and you can see it's kind of puncturing up above above this line here, which is the downtrend line. So we'll have to see what they report this week. But given that NVIDIA, their stock is 10x what AMD stock is, and AMD is likely going to get more than 10% market share over time. We think there's a buying opportunity, or at least a trade here in AMD stock, as maybe that quarter's good and they give a good outlook, and in a massive spending environment, this stock might do fairly well. The Federal Reserve meets on Wednesday. We think that Powell will come out and reiterate the lack of progress on inflation and keep the rates, the message will be we're going to keep rates higher for longer, but maybe they'll talk about the balance sheet a little bit. So maybe a little bit of an offset there. But we don't think anything big is going to come out of the meeting. They don't want to continue to stimulate the economy, likely, as inflation is too high. And then the employment reports on Friday, the revisions of the third quarter were remarkably negative. So they said they had roughly $600,000 jobs created in the third quarter of last year. They wiped it all out, and it's negative 192. So I'm not sure how they do these numbers, but it's totally ridiculous. So the market's not going to give a hoot about these numbers, in my opinion. You can't trust them. The employment report has become a farce lately. So that's coming on Friday, just to be aware of it. So our conclusion is that the expectations of the Fed is not in the market yet of higher for longer. It's working its way through it. We have a valuation problem in the overall market, and it's driven by the level of interest rates and inflation. So we'd like to see oil prices come down, and we think there's a path for that. So technically, the market's not set up quite right yet. Stagflation is being talked about a little bit in the overall market. To have a rally in the overall market, you got to get that out of the vocabulary of the market itself. So you need lower inflation. And so we're looking for the technicals to set up. In the meantime, we see some opportunities in individual stocks. There's a lot of stocks that we've talked about in the past on these calls. But given the massive spending in AI, we think that there's some ways of playing that at this point that everybody's not completely aware of. We see opportunities in the small cap space if inflation would come down, but the biotechnology space looks really attractive to us. The small cap biotechnology stocks do. And then go back, you go back and review some of the stocks we've talked about. Raytheon, what the government did on passing roughly $100 billion of spending for our allies to defend themselves, we think Raytheon is set up for the next couple of years. They have good performance. J&J, I can't believe how low that stock's gotten. We think that there's an opportunity in that one as well. And in the mortgage REIT space, we like that. So as we go along, we're finding these unique opportunities in stocks to get involved in. And just in general, we're cautious about the overall market. Thank you very much. Please hit like, subscribe to the channel. Just remember that sometimes it's hard to deliver the email to you because it may go into your spam. So going on to YouTube and subscribing is a nice way of making sure you see what we're talking about every week. Come to my website, Patrick Adams CFA, sign up for a hard copy of Market in a Minute, and we'll email that to you every week as well. Take care.